Hi everyone, my name is Gaurav. If you're watching us now and if you're watching it sometime in future, just I would say thank you very much for stopping by. The reason to start this series is very simple. We all celebrate or talk about the technologies that like Docker, Kubernetes, and anything that revolves around the Kubernetes world or the cloud native landscape in general. But behind the scenes, there are a lot of people who contribute. Instead of just being part of the big organizations, these are people who go out of their comfort zone, dedicating their time over the weekends and taking time out of their comfort zone. So I want to talk to these people. How do they feel? How do they even start contributing? And what is it that keeps them motivated? So, and what is that something that they do after they are done with the tech work? What is their personal life is? At least we could get some inputs and what they do in the free time. So yeah, to start with, I think none other than Gianluca could have been the great option because he is a close friend of mine. At least I think so because we do connect really well. So let me add him to the stream straight away because instead of me introducing, it would be great if he introduces himself. So yeah, here you go, Gianluca.
Hey, Gav. Thank you for having me. So I'm excited to be the first one.
I mean, this was an obvious choice. If you remember, way back in I think January or February, we discussed it sometime that I have a few questions that I would like to ask about your journey as a CNCF ambassador, as a Docker captain, and since then I have been planning to do this, but now it is finally after a few months. Here we are finally.
Today is the
So
day.
yeah, I think let's start with a small introduction about you. What do you generally do and what it is?
Yeah, I'm Gianluca, and I'm from Italy. I live in a countryside nearby Turin, so in the north, close to the Alps. So I ski when it's winter, and I hike when it's summer time. And yeah, I'm a software engineer, and I keep balance between more ops-oriented roles and more dev role. But I started as a developer, and as many people, I started with PHP, and I moved to other languages based mainly on interest and willing to learn new things. That's me. Since my first day, I started with open source because that's almost how I ended up, being a developer. I studied it at high school. And after that, I took a job. My first job was a solo developer job. I made a CMS for a lab, and obviously I didn't know how to code properly, so I wrote it like a couple of times.
That's something hard to believe. You didn't know how to code because because we have worked closely. So yeah.
Yeah, I studied it at high school. I made some, Java training back then. I learned PHP, but it was my first job, and I was kind of alone there. So the way I started, it was like I opened ERC on Freenode, and I started to make thousands of questions about how to do everything. And for me, that was the first touch to development. Making questions and knowing that there is more than code when it comes to writing quality code.
So you said you started with open source directly. So I wanted to know how did you get exposed to open source? I mean, because I when I was in college, I barely knew about open source. It was only after I got into a full-time job that I realized, okay, there's something known as open source, and you can contribute there. How did you?
Yeah, I used to play a browser game back then. I'm very bad with gaming, so I wasn't really a good player even. But it was the time where like forums were everywhere and people were sharing, their thoughts about the game. But it also had like a subzone of people that were developing scripts for simplifying like work. And this is how I saw that you can actually write code and make computers do what you want. So that's how everything started. And then the developers who used to write those scripts used PHP, and I learned that there is open source there, and there are people and write code during their own time and share it publicly to many people that can enjoy and learn how to code. So that's my touch with open source. And since then, for me it's mainly the way I learn and operate, let's say. So moving forward, I started to answer more questions, or developing, instead of just doing questions, I started to answer them and contributing to some code or doing presentations and documentation.
So when you say answering questions, was it like you were part of some, I don't know if Slack existed then, but what did,
No,
like you said, forums?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, it was mainly like ERC and Freenode. So I was there in a couple of chats, and that's it.
And do you also answer on Stack Overflow? I think that is the place where go-to place.
Yeah, I have to say I'm not a big Stack Overflow player in any way, but I answered a few questions, mainly on it's. Sometimes I open. I like to give back, so like as usual, developer use Stack Overflow, and I use Stack Overflow as well. So when I jump into a question and I can answer, I do it, but it's not something I do very often.
Okay. Because I've seen people. So I don't know if you probably already know John Skeet.
Mm-hmm.
John Skeet, I think he was number one at Stack Overflow ranking, and it was for couple of years. And he's really famous in the Java world, and I think in .NET as well. So I've seen people who were dedicatedly spending time on Stack Overflow so that they can rank up, and sometime get to that top rank.
Yeah,
I've seen people like that as well.
Yeah, it's not something I really do. So I'm mainly nowadays I mainly sit on Slack channels, and if a question shows up, I try to answer. And because it's also the way I do. Sometimes I do questions, and I like when people answer me. So I try to do the same. Otherwise, the loop won't work. So
yeah, absolutely. So how come you started your journey as so? Did you start getting involved into containers first, or you started with CNCF direction first?
No, I joined the Docker Captain group straight when they opened it, and it was like I never planned to do it. I didn't apply. I was in Dublin back then because I lived there for 1 year and a half. And Docker was just, raising in popularity, and there is a huge Docker meetup in Dublin. And when you work, far away from your home country, meetups are a very good way to learn new stuff, meet people, and have free food. So for me, it was a feeling.
I really miss those free foods and cold drinks. Soft drinks, The drinks were really awesome.
I joined the Docker meetup, and one of the events, one of the guests was Jerome Petazzoni, that was working at Docker. And after the meetup, we went to a pub, and we had a few beers, and he told me that they were thinking about starting a Captain program. And I say that was interesting because, as I said, I like to. It's good to have a group of people that have the same goal. So back then, and still today, for us, the goal was to share contents and develop, contents that the community can use to learn and write Docker containers better. So since then, a lot changed, but the focus is still the same. A group of people that wants to use Docker or CNCF tools and want to share what they do. So it's good when you don't do it alone, by yourself, but you join a group of people.
So I think a lot of people who are watching now or watching in future do not know that Gianluca also has a blog. So I'll share that in the chat.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's just a place where I write a few notes about what I do, what I learn. I think, I used to do conferences, but I also like to write. It takes more time for me to write than do presentation now, because I made
Yeah.
so many PowerPoints in my life that I'm kind of used to it. Writing it's harder. But yeah, I like it. I like the feeling that you get when you press the submit button and it goes live and
Yeah,
content.
absolutely. So, being on the Docker captain side, does it change your role? As in, I know you like to contribute any way you can, and you go ahead and help people with their queries. But is there something specific that is like expected out of a Docker captain?
Not really. It used to it changes mainly based on the people who lead the program. So it's on us to figure out what we can do. Over time, we started to track, our contributions, and the Docker Captain blog posts or contents were
Yeah.
shared as part of the newsletter. So it's, as I said before, it's like if you can build a good loop, it will enforce itself. So you write good
Yeah.
contents, you have people that do the same, so you can exchange ideas. But
Yeah.
there is no really expectation on, you have to develop contents, otherwise you will be kicked
Okay.
out or
Okay.
whatever.
Because
um,
initially I had this impression that these were the people like they have to go ahead and speak at almost every conference wherever they can, be present, absolutely present in Slack or any community discussions or channels. They have to be there. But glad to know that's not the case.
Yeah, no, I think it's the other way around. I mean, if you like to, give back, help people, and
Yeah.
you like to develop content, it's kind of a consequence is that you look for a good way to share them and to have them shared, or to figure
Yeah.
out more to write about. And yeah, this group of people just tries to help each other, um, but there is no like things that mandatory requirements that you need to achieve.
Absolutely.
Obviously, I presume that just because it's a small group, the people who are there, I sometimes I feel like I'm holding a lock, so I want to be a good captain because I'm holding a seat that somebody else can make good use to. So I think that's important. We tend to, as a person, it's easy to sit down and say, I'm arrived. I don't need to do anything
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but I think deeply about the role, even as a CNCF ambassador, but also as a Docker captain, because not everyone can be like a Docker captain or
Yeah.
CNCF ambassador. So as long as I feel useful in such roles, I'm happy to do it. When I won't be useful anymore, I will do something else. So.
I think that's really sweet and kind of you at the same time, because it also comes from the retrospective that you do with yourself, because you have to understand, okay, is this adding a sense of satisfaction to me as well? Unless it is, there's no point of doing the same thing. And if you're not enjoying giving back to the community, you will ultimately end up like, I'll do it one day and be gone away, like far away from the screens or from the community for another month or so. Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of people speaks about like open source sustainability, and they want to figure out how to get paid or stuff like that. I mean,
Yeah.
I have different opinions than a lot of people that I read on Twitter about that. And recently, I know Salvatore Sanfilippo, that is the developer who wrote Redis. It's called Antirets on GitHub, and he recently wrote a comment on Hacker News, I think, or it was Reddit, probably Hacker News, saying that even if he wrote Redis on its own at the beginning, and he enjoyed doing it because he were free to do what he felt was good back then, and obviously it was successful, a great product, but it was also one person driving
Yeah.
the project mainly, obviously with contributors and maintainers, but his role was predominant on the Redis organization. And he said that it is cool to leave issues and pull requests open forever. I mean, it's good for the user to ask for things, but it's
Yeah.
also good for the maintainer to do how it feels it's right. So you can answer, or you can not if you feel that it's not time. But it's good if you do it because you like it. It's better. So
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And this also brings me to the second question, or not the second one, but the other question I would ask: how did you ended up in CNCF as a CNCF ambassador? How was the journey?
um, yeah, I don't I don't really remember. I think it
So
was
I can
it,
give
it,
it,
it
I can give you a hint. Like I just dropped, or maybe not. You may not be able to say this. So I stumbled
yeah.
upon this video while I was going through the CNCF ambassador program. I don't know why I was looking for it, but yeah, this is your
Oh yeah.
interview, and I saw it. And then when we connected on the, so okay, to give people some context, Gianluca and I, we have worked together on the Tinkable project. It has been a great journey together. And when I saw you there, okay, okay, I know this guy, man. And this is a very familiar face because other than that, other than you, I would say I didn't really know anyone. I just heard about Alex, but I think he joined, or he was there before you or before
Yeah,
after you.
before me.
Okay, yeah. So I'd heard about Alex, but never really interacted with him. It was a great experience with him as well. A lot of learnings from there. But watching someone on a YouTube, like, okay, this is a CNCF ambassador, and there's an interview, and then you see that person, and because you were there as a CNCF ambassador, I also searched for you on Google, and okay, now he's a Docker captain as well. So
Yeah, I
I
mean,
felt very privileged to be there, to be honest.
thank you. But yeah, I mean, I think it's mainly driven by how I like to, as I said before, I'm repeating myself here, but this is
Yeah,
just this is just as it is. I like to, that's how I learn. So when I pick a tool, I look at it on GitHub, and I usually look at the people who wrote it, and if I find the tool useful, usually I end up writing a blog post, or maybe I do a conference around a talk around it,
yeah,
because if it's useful for me, it will be useful for somebody else as well. And
absolutely.
the a lot, you don't need to be, as many people say, you don't need to be a developer to contribute. So
Yeah,
a lot of my contribution are not even as a developer. I was part of the SIG release for Kubernetes for a couple of iterations, for a couple of releases. And back then, it wasn't really, code wasn't a predominant, you know, challenge in
okay.
my
So
role there. It was
you
mainly
acted as
trying
a
to,
So you acted as a release lead as well, I think.
yeah, I made a few iteration with different roles, but yeah,
Okay.
I did the bug triage lead. So the Kubernetes is split in SIGs that are special
Yeah,
interest groups.
correct.
And a really good one is the SIG release, who is the group of people who maintains the release lifecycle for Kubernetes. So CI/CD, and they press the button when it's time to do a new
Yeah,
release. And part of the role there is to figure out all the issues that needs to go into a new release, and see their status, and try to push them to an end, even if it is like a merge. Because obviously, if when a project is so big, you need to chase people and say, oh, you say that you're gonna merge you want this feature in 120, but 120 approaches in like 2 weeks. Are you
yeah,
gonna do it, or should we change the milestone?
yeah,
Or if we keep track of all the issues, and we try to figure out if the release is getting too big or too small. So it's not really, it's mainly a consolidation rule, and we try to to make all the issues aligning, and all the pull requests that needs to be merged. It's
So,
always,
yeah, sorry.
yeah, it's always fun, but it's also, there's a lot of back and forth, because
Yeah,
there are many contributors, many maintainers, and you kind of have to figure out who is the right person that can help to move that pull request
yeah,
forward. So that's the kind
absolutely.
of role that I did for the Kubernetes SIG release for a couple of iterations.
So, I do have some experience, not being on the team, but being as an applicant. So, I did apply for Kubernetes Release Shadow. Unfortunately, I was not selected, but in future, fingers crossed. I, I,
Yeah.
I I really look forward to that experience because I've never been onto a release team, be it a project or on an open source project, especially, is going to be a very different experience, like you said. Okay, so while you were describing this whole journey, I noticed one thing, and you said one way of contributing is not just the code. You contribute in different ways. So could you elaborate on that?
Yeah. I mean, code is one side of the spectrum. To have a good, to make a piece of code a good project or a usable project, there are many factors. So documentation is one, or presentation is another one. If you like it, just make some noise about it so other people can
Absolutely.
embrace it and use it.
Yeah.
Or you can write blog posts, or you can answer to issues and pull requests. So this is mainly, and I have to admit that code is, when I, for the projects that I followed or liked as a contributor, code wasn't really my main touch. Usually I end up doing other stuff because I code all day. So it's good to change vibe time to time. So.
Absolutely. And actually, the reason I ask this is because I've seen a lot of developers. And when I started my journey as an open source contributor, I also had this impression that, if you're not contributing to a project in terms of code, you're not really contributing. And I think in being into this industry for like 3 or 4 years, when I started contributing to open source, I now realized that I was really stupid. Yeah, I mean, code is only one part, but creating a user experience is something which is the highest of great importance, be it with code, be it documentation, or like you said, making the noise for the project.
Yeah, obviously, as a developer, it's easier for us to clone a repository and start to slice and dice in the code and see what we can do to make it better. I think it's a reasonable way to go. But open source has the same problem that closed source has. So usually code is not well documented, or it can be styled in a different way, and there are people that ask questions and open issues, and those needs attention as well. So if you feel like you don't like to write code that day, you can just open the issue tracker and go over them, and you will be. I'm sure you will try something to do for any repository that you want.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. And so you contribute to a lot of projects. I think you started the initiative for test containers Go implementation, because I've seen that you're one of the maintainers. I think the top contributor, I would say, for that project.
Yeah, that was a fun story because when I was at Influx,
and you are in Influx Ace as well, if I recall correctly.
I worked there. I worked at Influx Data for 3 years as a site reliability engineer. And when I at some point I was super involved with tracing, so I was looking around to integrate InfluxDB with many different tracers. And back then, Zipkin was one of the one I used most was in Java. It is in Java, and I'm not a Java developer of any kind. So I cloned the repository and I tried to, make use of my skills in some way. And I ended up, the Zipkin used test containers. It's super popular in Java to do it. It's almost like writing Docker containers with code. So you can spin up Docker containers in your tests, and you can do like integration tests easily. Because obviously, if you do, a lot of people do Docker Compose. So they do Docker Compose up, they have their 3, 4, 5 containers, and they use them in their integration test. But the feeling you get when you have those containers manageable in your code is super powerful, because you can write class and reuse functions. I really like the approach, and Go didn't have a porting for that library, so I decided to do it. It kind of, I realized that it kind of growth, because now we are almost to like 1,000 stars on GitHub, and downloads are good. So it's and I was looking at a very different project. I saw that small library, I liked it, and I decided to port it in Go, because I write Go almost all day nowadays. So
And I think it absolutely makes sense. You see a gap in a particular language or something, a tool that could be definitely used by a different community and is existing in another community. I think that's absolutely great. So it was really appreciable contribution, I would say. A great step
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
towards.
thank you.
So
And yeah,
yeah,
I now we have more maintainers to the library, because I'm
yeah,
not also over time you change maybe project that you don't really use that library anymore. I still use the test containers, but I was using it way more in my previous job. Um, and so it's good to we had a few people contributing continuously, and we just onboard them as a maintainer, and you create a group, and now you are not alone anymore, and it's even more fun.
yeah.
So,
And I think now test containers is also implemented in other languages like .NET. We also have for, I think, Python and others. So I just shared for people who are watching this, just to give you a context, I just shared a GitHub link to test containers. It's a So how do you describe it, Gianluca, if you have to describe
it,
test containers for anyone
Yeah, I
in a
mean it's
nutshell?
it's a programmatic way to spin up containers in Docker containers in test suites. So when you can write unit tests that are not unit anymore. So you use your unit test framework, but you interact with the Docker daemon with a simplified API that is designed for
Right.
tests. So you have you can create a container. The ports are exposed automatically, and they are mapped in a way that can run in parallel. So you can spin up like 10 MySQL and you can run parallel testing. This is usually a challenge when you do integration tests in other ways, because port collision and so forth. With Docker and test containers, it's a feature that we do by default, and we map all the ports in a way that won't collide, so you can run your test in parallel.
And I think this is one way you can definitely use Docker instead of just creating containers from the CLI. This is a great example of how Docker can be used in when you're in a development environment as well.
Yeah,
So another way,
technically the challenge is not huge. I mean, it's almost a wrapper around the Docker API that is designed for writing to be used in a test framework.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those who would be interested to learn about test containers more, I just shared Gianluca's talk about 2 years old one, which I have seen. It's about writing maintainable integration tests with Docker. So yeah, it's a great talk. You should definitely watch it out.
Thank you.
So and we like test containers so much that we now have it in Tinkerbell as well. We use it in Tinkerbell as well. So why don't we talk for a bit about Tinkerbell, what it is, and what it is that you are doing with Tinkerbell these days?
Yeah. Yeah, Tinkerbell better than me, I want to say. So
No. Please go ahead. Please go ahead. You being my guest.
So it's for the people watching, it's like bare metal provisioner. So I work at Equinix Metal, and we do bare metal cloud, let's say. So you don't rent VMs, you rent server proper servers, and ideally you need a tool that can help you to install the operating system you want, or you can do discovery of new hardware. So ideally, the way I described it is how you make a server that is in a box look a bit smarter. So you put an API on top, and you can install operating system or do an inventory of what's running in the server. And Tinkerbell does that leveraging containers. So there is a server, and there is an agent that runs on all servers, and you can create workflows that get executed, and those workflows are list of containers that runs one after each other, and you can format disks, or you can download operating system images and so on. No, that's what it is. So, and now it's part of the CNCF as well, has a sandbox project.
Yeah, exactly. So CNCF Sandbox is Tinkerbell. Oh no, Tinkerbell is a CNCF Sandbox project now. So and we always look forward to contributions. And if you're interested to joining us or get a feel of what we are working on. So you can always join a bi-weekly meeting. I'll share the links in the description. So yeah, how does what do you think like is the future for Tinkerbell? What are the things that you look forward to? Like it would be great to have something like this in Tinkerbell.
Yeah, something we have to work on is workflows that runs by default when there is nothing to do. So
Okay.
right now you need to know your hardware, and you have to
Absolutely.
register your hardware in Tinkerbell,
Yeah.
and from there you can assign workflows to the node itself. Something that will be very useful is to be able to run workflows even if there is no hardware registered. So
Okay.
Tinkerbell use iPixie. So
Right.
when a server boots, it goes in Pixie mode and it reaches the DHCP, it downloads a script and starts an operating system. And from there, you have an operating system, a Linux Alpine distro running there with a Docker container inside, and we run containers on it. So this is almost like the an easy way to describe how it works. And ideally, when you have you can run our workflows even if you don't have a hardware registered. So you can register the hardware by your own. So ideally, you get
Okay.
a new rack, you hook it into the network, and you switch it on, and Tinkerbell will be able to discover and register new servers without you having to populate the registry list. And
Yeah.
has more,
Pre-population.
yeah, and has more. As smarter we can do the workflow, better it will be, because I assume you want to know all the devices that are part of the machine or the architecture, if it's ARM or Intel or whatever. So we can make that workflow really smart and capable of figuring out all the bits that a hardware is made from.
So we also got a question from Chitra Basu. Uh, how
Hey.
does how are test containers different from BusyBox or Alpine containers? And
Yeah,
the second question to the same is, does it has additional functionalities?
Yeah, test containers is a library in Go, so it's not like BusyBox or Alpine are distros. So those are two different topics. You can see test containers as a wrapper around the Docker API that you can use to create containers and to manage their lifecycle in your test suite. So the API, the library you get has an API that is familiar when you write integration tests. And with familiar, I mean that you can start a container, but you can also clean it up, deleting the variables and so on. So it's designed for testing frameworks.
Yep, that's right. And so when anyone starts their journey as with Docker or Kubernetes in general, or basically anything around CNCF Cloud Native, if you look at the CNCF landscape, it's like overwhelming. Where do they start? So, what would be your suggestion to anyone who is really starting up?
Yeah, I think you always have to figure out your needs first. So obviously, if you open the landscape saying, "Oh, today I want to use 10 tools," it's a
Yeah,
different it's a different challenge.
absolutely.
I assume
Yeah,
it's super fun to do, but you have to, if you come with the lens of your needs, the landscape will shrink
narrow
down
down.
to a
Yeah,
few tools. And I can tell you how I will start onboarding a new tool. My tool chain, I wrote on my blog about my tool chain because it's like has a I'm not a builder, I'm a developer, but I have a tool chain and I take good care of it. So the tools that get added to the tool chain are well thought, and there is always a cleanup. So when I don't use a tool anymore, I just declare it out of my tool chain, and it will
okay.
take a new evaluation to get it. But it's just because there are tools that are very powerful, and there are many tools that overlaps in features. So I prefer to learn a new feature from a tool that I already use more than adding another one, because it would be overwhelming to me.
Yes.
And
And that also increases your learning curve as well. If you want to keep on adding new tools instead of, yeah, that would definitely be overwhelming for anyone.
Yeah, so I'm, but that's a story for another time, I suppose. Like when it comes to onboarding, like for example, those days I'm trying to learn Nix, the OS, Nix OS, because I think it's a good way to do provisioning and build of operating system in a way that I like, because it involves codes, and with code I know how to deal with code, so I feel better when I see code around me. But usually I clone the repo, because Nat is the I don't remember the surname, but is the CEO of GitHub, made a very good point during a keynote from a GitHub universe. He says that as soon as you clone the a GitHub repository, it becomes like your code, and you see like that repository has something that you can write as well. So obviously, if you look at it, if you open links on GitHub, you tend to look at your dependency as somebody else's business. But as soon as you clone the repo in your workflow, in your working, directory, in your Git directory, it becomes like all the other code you have. And it's a good way for me to, start a contribution if I want to contribute with code. Otherwise, for me, I know I will end up doing questions, because I like to do questions. I know that there are many people that struggle days and nights. I do for some tools, so I struggle for a couple of tools, but for the others, I write questions. So because I know somebody figured it out already, but never wrote about it. So when I have time, because usually the delta between making a question and getting an answer is kind of unknown. So if you have when I have time, I like to write questions. It can be on issues, or I join Slack or ERC and I do questions there. And doing a question is a contribution. It's a noisy one for the maintainer, but
you don't even realize when you are creating a knowledge base for others as well.
So I learned that quickly when I started on ERC, because I tended to reach privately people back. It was like 10 years ago. So I was 19 years old, not really, young. And so I was, when somebody was answering quickly and good to my questions, I, ping them privately and say, oh, thank you, I have many questions, can you help me? And they always force me to do them in public. Even if we had a good relation, they always tell me, go on the public and do the question publicly. I will answer there, but do it publicly. And I think that's super important. So don't feel, bad if you have questions. And also don't waste, 10 days on an issue on a problem that somebody has figured it out but never wrote about it. So don't be shy, do questions.
So I would add to the same what you were saying. So recently I started exploring Containerd, and I was not really sure where should I start contributing, because I was really interested, to try this out and understand how it works. So the first thing I did was to clone the repo, and I did run a quick glance through the docs. Like generally there are typos, and I found a few. But that was my teeny tiny contribution to Containerd, and I helped. I mean, these are the people are going to refer the documentation, and if you see the typos there, it kind of creates a bad impression for the project. So that was my teeny tiny contribution. And then I started attending Containerd's community meeting. I did attend one last week sometime, and at least I got a good feel what is going through the project. And then on the next day I had a few questions which are dropped on Slack. So for anyone who is starting their container journey, not just container journey, for any project in open source, that should be your approach towards the contribution side.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I like to bring all those good stuff to my working environment. So I work in open source, even when I work on projects from my employer, so from Equinix Meta. Because I really like how it works. So I tend to do asynchronous communication. I don't expect people to answer to my questions too much, and so on. So I really like to to be open and to learn in public when I can. I'm doing it less often because it's developing. I learned that even if I wrote many blog posts, I did many videos, but I learned that content development is a work on its own.
Yeah.
And I want to do it in a good way, but I have another job. It's not,
Yes.
and it takes time. I see, David Rockhorn. It's my colleague at Equinix Metal. He does many streams. He does many,
Yes.
videos on YouTube, and it's a work on its own. And in order to be good at that, you need to sit there and make a plan. And if I didn't have much time, or I didn't want to do much planning those days. So I have to admit that I'm not writing much, I'm not doing much, but it's a journey. So sometimes you write a lot, sometimes you take a break. I'm in the break side now.
Okay. So since we are on the break side, I would take a pause on the tech side and let's talk about the gardening. I can't really resist talking about the garden and your new home. So I think you're already there. I can see the background change.
Yeah.
So yeah,
the background
can we
is
have a
different.
quick glance? Can we have a quick look?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, yeah. This is my sofa. You can see my.
Oh, nice. So to give people some context, this is the new home for Gianluca, and I know this because I have seen since we have been connected for quite some time. I've seen the phase where it was in construction, and I was really excited to see how it goes. And the final thing, it's still in something. Few things are in progress. But
yeah, I mean, it's a long journey because we decided to do a good reconstruction. So we made all the plumbing new, and all the heating part, all the water. It's all new. The electric cabling is all brand new. So we had to almost destroy all the floors and do them again. So it took a while, but it's fun. My girlfriend, she's an art conservator, so she works on stones and wall painting. So she's way better than me when it comes to manual work, and so it was a fun. It is a fun project. But on my own time, I do offline gardening, and the offline part is important. So no IoT gardening in my place.
So I presume you already have a garden here as well.
I have a garden. Yeah. I can go outside because I didn't cable all the Wi-Fi, so I can't really bring it there because otherwise I would crash. But
some other day.
It's down there, and yeah, if you watch me on Twitter, I tend to share garden picture those days very often because it's the good season. So I'm gonna. I have strawberries growing and a couple of other stuff. But yeah, I started to do gardening because I was, 5 years ago, I started to work from home. And for me, at some point, it was complicated to justify waking up earlier. So I'm not really a person who wakes up early and and I don't run or do crazy stuff, meditation. So I don't really do all those stuff. Even if successful people say that you should wake up really early and do all the cool stuff that people do in the morning, I tend to sleep until I have to work. And when you work from home, you don't have all the interesting traveling to do. So I don't take trains anymore because I work from home. My home is not big enough; it doesn't require a train inside. So and yeah, I decided to my grandfathers used to do gardening, and I really enjoyed watching them doing it or eating my own food or day food.
Came very naturally, I would say.
And so I just started, and it's a good way to wake up 1 hour earlier, 1 hour and a half earlier, go outside and relax before starting to work.
Having something you have produced by your own hard work and it's very organic, absolutely, it feels great. Absolutely.
It's
waking up early in the morning. So I wake up at 4:30 a.m. I think it's quite early for a few people, but it's now coming to as a habit as of now. But yeah, it is whatever works for you, man. Whatever works for you.
Yeah, no, it's also what if you want to do something early in the morning, obviously you wake up early in the morning, but in my case, I was waking up and I didn't really have anything to do. So I was like, what? And now what? So why I'm waking up at like 6 a.m. And now I have a reason. I go outside and I plant trees and stuff like that.
Yeah, awesome. So I think we had a good chat. We are already 45 minutes into the discussion. I didn't even realize that. So and any few tips, any last words that a word of advice for any new contributors or anyone in general who are new to the IT industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think I really find my journey to contribution effective to me. So the one I shared, so you clone the repo, you start to look at it, you make questions, and everything is a contribution. So if somebody told you that it's not enough, it's not the right person, don't trust them, and also do what you like. So if you don't
Absolutely.
open source is a job for a lot of people, but it's also fun. And if you don't like it, don't do it. Or if you feel that it's not time anymore to do open source, take a break and do something else. Don't put yourself don't lock yourself in any way in open source. So if you like it, do it, and everything will come. So don't be shy to do questions, even if it takes time or they don't get answered. Sometimes you won't get the answer you're looking for. But if you don't get them, share the answer yourself. So find it and share it. That's important.
Yes. Awesome. It was great to have you here, Gian. And let's conclude this. We both say goodbyes to the streamers who are watching us now and who will be watching us later. So it was a great conversation. I'm sure people would have some ideas of how they can contribute and how they should be approaching to it. Plus some gardening and excitement towards new home. We both are moving towards the new home. So yeah, that it would be nice. I'll share the details with you separately, and maybe in another episode I'll show my home as well, hopefully.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. Good luck.
Sure. Thanks, man. Until the next episode, where we will definitely meet, Gianluca and I will take a bye-bye, and thank you for joining us now. And if you're watching it later, thank you for your time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.